Hey, it's time for They Talk Funny. This is Paul Ash. My special guest today is going to be the amazing Simon Rakoff. Let's bring Simon Rakoff into the studio so we can all chat. Welcome, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Up and down, but feeling good today.
Good, good. I'm glad that you're feeling good today.
Glass of beer helps.
That's definitely, you've got a rabbit on the bottom of your glass.
Oh, this is a branded glass. Yes, I drink the old style Pilsner. You see?
Old okay.
Style. My mood is brought to you by Old Style Pilsner. Yes, and that's their. This is the branded glass, which I actually got from a comedian / bartender at a bar because I just buy it in cans for my home. And I was served it in this glass. I said, "Oh, that's a nice glass," and he gave it to me.
Sweet, that is nice. Most people have to kind of sneak them out, but you were given permission.
I would never sneak one out.
Yeah. Now you're all right. You started stand-up comedy in 1978.
That's right.
You would be about 18 years old when you started comedy.
17. Yep.
17, and you are. You're known as for being a writer, being a comics comic, being a road warrior as well, and almost like a quintessential Toronto / Canadian comic. Yet you were born actually in South Africa.
I was, but we came here when I was an infant. I mean, I was, I believe, 9 months old when we left South Africa. I said to my parents, apartheid is a stain on our moral compass and those of everyone around us. And they agreed that the kid was right. And we came to Canada.
Popped over.
Exactly.
I'm glad that you had the power of persuasion as an infant to convince your parents.
And we started a whole new life. They left everything behind except the piano. You can't get the South African pianos here. They're different. They have all the black keys up at one end and all the white keys down at the other.
Okay, you have obviously you've been writing on this subject for a long time. For anyone that is listening, I should mention if you have any questions, you can just write them in the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, and we can make sure that Simon hears his questions. And I can continue with that. Now, when did you realize that you wanted to do stand-up?
It's one of those funny things that I've never looked at this as a job or a career, even though I've now been at it over 42 years. It's always just been kind of, I actually have a t-shirt I sell that says, "Comedy's not a job, it's a personality disorder." It's always just been the way I was. Even before I ever tried it, I was always like that. I joked all the time, As a kid, I was a fan of some albums, comedy albums were big back then and have sort of made a resurgence in the last few years. But, there was a time where that was the main sort of way you hear comics. You'd see them occasionally on television. But, I was a big fan of Woody Allen's stand-up album, The Nightclub Years. Was a huge influence on me when I started, just in terms of writing and the style of jokes. A big fan of Bill Cosby's albums, all the horrible people. I really, really enjoyed their comedy when I was growing up. This was before you knew what, pieces of garbage they were as humans. But
we could keep that separate.
Well, we didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. They kept it separate, I guess, is what I should be saying.
Right.
All right. This begs the question then. Do you believe in separating the art from the artist?
It's very hard with stand-up because it's a lot like, to me, it's a lot like a singer-songwriter. It's not it's about your feelings and your points of view on things. It's very hard in this specific type of art, I would say, to separate the art from the artist. It's not like a painter where, if you find out the guy who painted the Sistine Chapel had a lot of affairs or mistreated young people, the art doesn't reflect his own view in the same way that me talking about the world and life and things does, in my opinion.
Yeah, I suppose it's like there's the films of Woody Allen. It's not just like when people are saying I'm never buying another Woody Allen film, and they're talking about the back catalog. There's a lot of other people who are making money off of that, who weren't involved and didn't know about what he was doing, and who are now no longer are losing their source of income as well. But that's for a broader discussion, I suppose.
And it's not like they didn't make money from it. I mean, when Kramer went off, when Michael Richards went off, it definitely damaged Kramer as a lovable character.
Yeah, most definitely.
As it should. I mean, although what's interesting to me about that is that was an example of, I don't even think the guy's a racist. I think he's just not a comic. And he thought he could just do it because, like so many people who watch stand-up, it looks easy because the whole work of stand-up is that it looks easy. That's the irony of it is it's, so much of show business is
making it look easy.
No, making it look hard. So much of show business is, those circus acts that, the sword swallower acting like it's a real dangerous thing. And then, ta-da, I lived, even though they know they're going to live and they know exactly what they're doing. And there's no danger at all, really. The act is making it seem more than it is. The trapeze artists practice endlessly. The rock stars who, add extra sweat and rocking out, to put show into the show. Whereas stand-up, the whole show is sort of like, hey, we're just having a little chat, and then zing, oh, you laughed, right? Because you've got to relax them so that you can throw them off balance with the jokes. You have to misdirect them into thinking you're just talking. So a lot of people watching comedy, stand-up, think, oh, he's just talking, because the art is in hiding the art.
Yes, I think that I misunderstood you because that's what I was referring to.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I wasn't clear, but I'm saying, so a guy like Michael Richards, who's obviously a very funny actor and talented guy, looks at it and goes, oh, well, I'm hilarious. I could do stand-up because they're just talking. He doesn't realize the art that's involved. He gets up on stage, gets in trouble. I mean, to me, it's like somebody watching Grizzly Adams and going, oh, I could live in the woods. Okay, good luck.
I'll just cuddle with this grizzly bear. It's
no surprise you get in trouble.
Yeah, and then it end up being a premise for an Erwin Barker joke. There is. So your early influences were Woody Allen, or were Bill Cosby. Were the albums you were listening to when you were younger, were they like the comedy albums, or were they more the party albums? Because the party albums was also sort of a
wasn't. No, that was. I heard about that stuff later. I found I was still a fan of comedy long after I started doing it. Now, less so now, to be honest. I mean, I almost never watch, the Netflix specials or any of that stuff. I find it, after this many years, it's very hard for me to not analyze what's going on. Even if somebody's terrific, I still sit there going, oh yeah, I see what they did there. I can enjoy a joke if I hear one that's good and enjoy it. But it's very hard for me to sit through somebody's whole special, and lose myself as an audience member.
Right. Which you could do with the albums when you were first
when I
being
was
exposed.
young and didn't know as much, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think comedy is a very intellectual exercise. You know, it's about thinking. It's not really about feelings. Music, you know, music is your feelings more. So you can listen to music and lose yourself in it. Comedy, it requires a certain amount of not knowing how it's done. It's like a magic trick or judo. You know, I mean, if I've never fought before, the guy will flip me every time. But if I'm a judo master, I see what's coming. I know what he's doing. It's, you know, it's not going to catch me.
Right. Yeah. That's a good analogy. I like that. So when you at 17, what was your routine like?
Oh, it was mostly about my ex-wives and no, it was a lot of you know, I talked about high school. I talked about being a kid. I was a kid. I mean, I had a bit about about how when my parents would have people over, they want me to clean up my room, and how I thought, boy, that must be a fun party. You know, hey, welcome. Skip the preliminaries. Where's your kid's room? You know, it's what you know. You write about what you know. You know, Paul Simon said he was writing very different songs at 20 than he wrote at 60. You know, it is very much, like I said, singer-songwriter. It's about what you know.
Yeah.
My act is extremely different now than what it was when I was a kid.
Well, life experiences changed.
Well, exactly.
Now, your album came out in 2014.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
it's the first thing I ever sort of made independently.
Yeah.
You know, I have no ambition. That's the other reason I've lasted in comedy, is because I just like making people laugh. You know, my material needs are few, and I'm good with where I'm at. You know, I have no show business ambitions. But the album was, you know, I was very happy with it. I made it in one shot, one take in front of an audience, and it turned out very well. I was very happy.
Nice. There was some very classic, like archetype laughers in the room as well, which helped, you know, definitely delineate the jokes. I mean, your writing definitely delineates the jokes, but the laughers were it was.
Well, that was the hardest part of making the album, was the casting of the laughers. I scoured the country, coast to coast. I went on a long tour finding people whose laughs I thought would suit the material best.
Well, there's some distinctive laughter on your album.
No, I noticed that too when I listened to it. Yeah,
Surrounded by Idiots. That's the
Surrounded by Idiots. That's the title.
That's
the title. Available wherever you buy your music, I guess, and all your audio needs online.
So definitely, yeah. So there's iTunes, Google Play. Was it on Spotify?
Baby is the other one.
The other one was
CD Baby, if you want.
CD Baby. That's right.
Yeah, but yeah, anywhere.
Now, you actually sort of jokingly said this, but did you record it at the end of a tour once you had returned to Toronto, or was it?
No, I mean, it was, I mean, yes, I guess it was in Toronto, and I'm always somewhere, so I suppose, but I don't really tour very much. You know, I have a daughter who's just about to turn 20. So for the last many decades,
so 6 years, you want to stay close.
Yeah, I would go away for 2 weeks maximum at a time.
Right. Now you've done the Winnipeg Festival. You've done Just for Laughs. We met there. You have any other festivals that you have?
I did Halifax. I did the one PEI comedy festival.
Oh, right. With Marie-France.
That's right.
Yeah.
I did Sudbury. I've been everywhere, obviously, well, no, I've never been north. I still have not played in the territories, which would be fun, but you know, there's very few people there, so
yeah, it's making it financially viable and all for the cost of the travel.
Exactly.
is difficult. Now, when you started comedy, 78, I'm not sure when Yuck Yuck started. Where were the was
well,
there
then that was it. That I started because a club opened.
It was opportunity presented itself, and that allowed you to express yourself in the way you needed to express yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I was always doing stuff at, summer camp or little school assembly type things. I was always doing stuff before that. I mean, even when I graduated from Hebrew school, I wrote a silly play that we all did, like in the style of those Mad Magazine musical parodies they used to have.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I mean, it's not like I started thinking about laughs when there was a club, but when a club opened, I thought, you know what? Why don't I try it?
And it must have stuck because you've been doing it for the past 42 years.
Yes, much to the chagrin of my parents at the time, I'm sure. I think my life would have been very different had it not gone well.
You've never had a day job?
No, I've had day jobs over the years. I've had to. It's been a while, but yeah, no. I mean, there was no way to make a living in comedy for a long time. I mean, when I started, there was the one club, and they didn't pay anything to anybody.
Right.
They weren't making any money. So
somebody must have been making money if there was a club.
Not initially.
Okay.
There were nights, in fact, where comedians slept in the club so that they couldn't lock it up because of unpaid bills.
I've never heard that story before. That was that's incredible. I thought because I heard it's like when comedy clubs opened within 2-3 years they were packed constantly. The people
within 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how they want the rent every month.
True. Okay. There was the boom, and the boom in Canada.
Right.
Did you get a chance to travel much to the States as well?
Almost never.
Almost never.
Almost never. I've been a couple of times, but you have to remember that in America, they don't care who you are if you're not from where they are. Right. I mean, I've been to I've done a few shows in the States. I did one show, for real, like a real paid show with papers and everything in Houston, and it was one of my least favorite shows I ever did. And I've gone to New York City and hung out at the club, and they say, okay, we'll put you on, and I wait and I wait and I wait, and I sit through a night of comics, with 2 years experience to go on last in front of the 5 remaining people as the rest of the audience has walked out. It's not really worth my time,
No. Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm friendly with a lot of, fairly big comedians in the States.
You came up with so many, and I know how, like, at Just for Laughs, everyone knew who you were. Like you're one of the quintessential Canadian comics, the ones that have been.
Oh, all the comedians know who I am, of course.
Yeah. Yes. And so that branches also into the States. The comedians from the States who come up here, they get to know you. I've seen you. Clan. What did it get changed to? The Underground. I think the last time.
Clandestiny.
That was, I think, the last time I saw you live.
Oh, okay.
So that would have been, that was a while ago. But it's you're one of the names. I'm kind of expecting more people to come in with questions because you're somebody that everybody knows.
Oh, I don't think anybody knows me. It's Canada. I'm a guy that 1 million people have seen, and maybe 4 would remember the name of the guy they've seen, because that's how it works here, right?
True.
We don't really have celebrity. It's not. We have talent, but we don't have no name recognition. I actually always thought that what Canada should have is a variety show once a week, a la Ed Sullivan,
or Tommy Hunter, or what was his name? The René Samad.
Yeah, excepting that was more about the star of the show. I'm saying
right.
without a star.
Oh, okay, without a star.
I'm saying a star like Ed Sullivan was a star, where they just introduce talent so that people can see all the great talent that we have in Canada, because nobody actually knows. I mean, this is one of the only places in the world where, there's nobody out there. Like, there's a network, CBC. Nobody from CBC has a job to go to clubs and concerts and venues and scout talent to put on TV. Their job is actually to tell the talent who go to them, sorry, we don't have any shows for you. I mean, that's more what their people are involved in, Like anywhere else in the world, it's actually a job for the network to send out a talent scout to go, hey, let's find people to put on our shows.
There's actually a star system in Quebec for French performers, which is quite successful in recognizing and grooming talent and then bringing them up to present. And I kind of wish there was more of that in English Canada.
Of course. But that's not how it works. We have the United States. The expectation is you work your act out here, and then you move to the better market in America or Europe. And of course, that's a ridiculous loss to our nation.
And then we pine that you've moved.
Well, of course, once somebody's moved away and done okay, then they're always shocked that they don't want to work here anymore.
Yeah,
after having begged to get work here.
Yeah, all the now. What do you think of the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comedy or stand-up comics?
I think it's a great thing, and finally about time. I mean, it was largely the work of Sandra Battellini, but also Adam Groh and the other people who are involved on the board, Monty Scott, and anyway, there's a whole gang of them, And I've done some writing mostly for them. If you go to their website, there's some essays I wrote, about the mission and why it's important and things like that.
Now, do you think that by coming together as the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comics that they can have like Heritage Canada or basically the ministry in charge of culture to sort of help recognize or develop a star system for English Canada the way there is in Quebec, because the one that operates in Quebec because it has the backing of the government.
Well, and they also have an audience that can't get what they want from anywhere else. I mean, there's a logical reason for it. But if they could be sponsored with Heritage, then they should be sponsoring Canadian comedians. I mean, we are. The problem is convincing people we're arts. I mean, there's, as I said, in the same way that people like Michael Richards can look at a comic and go, he's just talking. The Heritage people look at it and go, well, that's not a craft or an art. That's just a guy talking without understanding how difficult it is to make it work.
Jim Madrino. Do you know Jim Madrinos?
I know who he is.
Yeah, there's a quote of his that I love, which is, "Stand-up comedy is the only art form designed to sell beer," which I think is it's sad that it sort of resonates as well as it does. Now, you wrote a letter to your MP, which you published today.
Right. Well, I think a lot of comedians are being encouraged to do this because
I don't want to limit it to comedians. I think a lot of Canadians should do this because a lot of Canadians really truly appreciate comedy, and especially right now with the lockdowns, quarantines, and everything that's happening in the world. I think the fact that people can be out there and providing entertainment to drown out the fatigue is important.
Well, not just that, but in fact, as art forms go, other than I would say the cirque, Canadian comedians are probably our number one, most successful, certainly export, and we're sort of internationally acknowledged as being among the best there are.
Yeah,
I mean, I've certainly had the experience when I did the Just for Laughs. That one time I did it, I had no trouble competing on shows with the international American and European acts that were there. I mean, I had every bit as good sets and laughs as they did.
Yeah.
Often better.
Yeah, I was there. I was backstage at the Club Soda for the shows that you did there.
Well, there you go.
So, well, why don't you read the letter and
we'll tell people. Don't I? Oh, that's not a question. That's encouragement. Sorry, I shouldn't have lashed out.
It's quite okay. I was raised to be passive aggressive. There is.
I sent this to my MP and also to Mr. Guilbeault, who's the Minister of Culture and Heritage. I said, I have been a comedian for over 42 years. I've had the pleasure of performing across the country, and I'm often a guest on CBC Radio's The Debaters. I only said this not to brag, but you should establish some credibility when you're writing something. The government still does not recognize practitioners of my craft as artists. Several weeks ago, the government announced a $500 million stimulus to the arts and culture sector, but comedy was not even mentioned. We were told by Canadian Heritage that the money was going to existing channels. That hardly seems just. We should be entitled to some government support for the craft we've developed into a nationwide business. Our best and brightest are lost to the better markets of the United States and Europe on a regular basis because we've been ignored for too long. Please, help us make a change. We have lobbied Parliament through the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comedians, but have received only thanks and lip service. We need legitimate avenues for funding. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you. Simon Rakoff. And then my phone number and address, which I'm not going to give out here.
Which I believe is on your post that you put online, though. So, but that is.
I thought I cut out my phone number and address, but
no, maybe you did. My memory
okay.
is
If you find it, call or write. Really, I'm happy to hear from you.
You've mentioned that you're not watching a lot of the Netflix. Actually, no. Let's go back. I'm going to try to follow the mandate of this show.
Please.
What do you what's your techniques when it comes to writing? Like, are you somebody who has to sit down every day to write, like, a set amount of time?
No.
So you look for inspirations, or you?
No, I'm the worst. I am not a model, kids. But again, there's almost nothing I see that doesn't make me laugh. I mean, almost everything I watch, I see as a funny thing. So I don't have to sit and go, well, I need a bit about blah, blah, blah. It's a nonstop thing. I just think of jokes all the time. I mean, recently I wrote a joke, so silly, but I thought it was funny, where somebody mentioned a Siamese cat. So I said, well, I couldn't afford a Siamese cat. I just sewed two regular cats together. Silly. But that's what came to me when I heard the term Siamese cat. My brain goes there. So I understand, and I'm always, not envious, but I'm impressed by those who can sit and go through and write. But for me, it's just whatever I see around me makes me laugh.
What do you think is in your makeup to have that happen? Like, is it part of your upbringing, the fact that your family came over here when you were so young, that like when your family came over, it was just your parents, you, your brother?
Nope, just me and my parents.
You and your parents. Your brother arrived later.
My sister and brother were born in Montreal.
Okay. So do you think, like, I mean, how long were you in Montreal? Do you think maybe there was some
7? I think being an outsider is definitely a factor. I think comedy, if they talk about time and distance being the keys of comedy, that the whole. I mean, the original. I'm going, into the academic side here, but the original meaning of commedia was just any show, any play in Greek theater, the commedia. Yes. They didn't separate it, but the whole notion is it's not actually happening. And that's what makes things funny, right? Most things that are funny are not happy, but they're not actually happening, and that's why they're funny. They trigger the anxiety response and relief, right? So the Siamese cat joke, it would be horrible if I sewed two cats together. That's not funny at all. It's horror. But you know, I'm not actually sewing two cats together, so it's a joke, and that's the point. I mean, that's how it works. So I think, you know, being anxious helps, and being a little outside of things, not feeling quite connected.
So being the outsider, and it's also maybe the defense mechanism as being the new kid without other people around.
Oh, you're ugly. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have.
I know that. I've got
no, I mean, I suppose it works well. I mean, I mean, it's hard to tell because I put my computer near me, but I'm a very small man, so I suppose, you know, there's that too. I you know, it's a good way to get.
How do I know that you're 5'7"?
I'm only 5'6". I thought I was 5'7". My doctor cured me of that delusion.
It's always somebody wanting to take an inch away.
She's kind of a bitch, I think.
Ouch. She has your health in your hand. You might want to treat her nicer.
She's a lovely woman. I'm totally joking about my personal physician. No, but I did get on that machine and she said 5'6", and I went, seriously? I really was surprised. Again, not that 5'7" is so big, you know. It's, but whatever. Again, I don't really care that much. That's not how my ego works, you know.
All right. So you just, you look at everything. You can see the funny in everything, and then you are the person you use that to select and then filter the material that you're going to use. Now, do you have, like, when it came to being on the road, did you have any memorable experiences that you wanted to share? Because you mentioned that Texas was not your least favorite show.
Well, it was among them, yes. Yeah.
Among them. Okay. Yeah. Is there something that was what happened in Texas that made it not?
Oh, they just were miserable. I mean, you know, sometimes it's not even about me. I mean, I'm loath to blame the audience. I'm happy to do whatever I have to do to try and make the show work, even if it's not for me every night. You know, as I've told young comics who pouting backstage about the bad crowd, I say, hey, some nights it's a job. You know, some nights it's not about your ego. You have to just do what you have to do to make them enjoy it, because you're the performer and it's their night out. But this was a Jewish singles group in Houston that hired me and another comic, and I got the sense that they had basically all dated each other and were really unhappy just seeing who'd showed up to the event. Like, long before we ever got there, they were already sitting there go, really? This is the choice? Well, I've had this choice, and this is going to be a miserable night. And then it was like, and here's the comedians. So I didn't blame myself particularly, but nonetheless, it's a long way to travel to be not enjoyed.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, you do play on your culture when it comes to your writing and to your performance.
Oh yeah, I do Jewish bits.
Yeah,
sure.
What is that a product of the voices you were learning from when you were younger, or is that something that you just feel comfortable, or is it something you didn't start with but you ended up kind of working into?
No, I mean, it's just another thing in my life. You know, I talk about relationships. I mean, I'm twice divorced. I talk about parenting. I have my daughter. I talk about being Jewish because I am. I talk about getting older because I am. You know, it's everything that's in my life becomes my act. It's the view of, you know, I'm not somebody who sees more than I see. I talk about things that I actually have a stake in, is kind of how I feel. So, that's one of the things that is true about me, is that I'm Jewish. And it's interesting because, of course, growing up, all the comedians were Jewish. And now, even though there are a number of Jewish comedians, almost none of them mention it ever.
Now, do you think that that's a change that has come around because of there used to be like the Borscht Belt. There used to be like there's still some segregated circuits in the U.S.
Okay.
But it's more or less like there's the black circuit, there's the gay circuit, and they still have that segregation. Montreal comics, we're so close to like the Borscht Belt area, and the Borscht Belt comics that sort of were the start of well, not the start. They were sort of like the tail end of the television comics that came up from Lenny Bruce famously played in the Borscht Belt for his last, how can I say, the last of his mainstream career before he sort of got blacklisted.
Right.
Now, the fact that kind of circuit no longer exists, do you think that is why there's less comics who focus on talking about the Jewish heritage when they're Jewish comics, or do you think it's not as prevalent in their lives because there wasn't that you have a great joke about the fact that your voice is not how you thought your voice would be when you were getting older.
Right. I talk about, I say that as a kid, when I'd hear old people, I assumed that when I got old, my voice would also turn into that voice. I didn't realize it was about where they were from. I assumed it's a function of age.
and that Borscht Belt was also sort of, that was a function of the mass immigration that happened,
Well, exactly. And they were a less assimilated group at the time. I mean, this is that group had been through the war mostly. I mean, we are fairly separated from that experience of being the other. So, we're Jewish at home, our generation, but it's not the same as it was, for them who lived in Jewish, towns or shtetls or whatever, and suddenly had to adjust to life. And even then, they lived in the Jewish area. That doesn't really exist anymore in the same way as it did back then. I mean, unless you're hyper religious, and those aren't the people who go to the comedy shows. I mean, when I perform, I mean, it's not that I don't do shows for a Jewish audience if they're themed that way, but for the most part, I'm dealing with a crowd of everybody. So if I talk about being Jewish, I have to make it accessible to everybody. When I do a Jewish show, I'm much more cruel to the Jews. I would never talk that way in front of a mixed crowd because it always would sound anti-Semitic.
Front of the shiksas.
The Goyim.
The Goyim. Yeah, shiksas the Goy. Yeah.
But I'm saying, but for Jews, I have lots of jokes that are for them. I mean, I make fun of Jewish audiences to Jewish audiences, and they really appreciate it.
Now, what's some of your favorite shows? There's got to be some highlight shows that really stand out for you as like the most fun you've had on stage.
Well, interestingly, it's often not the most high profile. A lot of the time, the shows that I enjoy the most are more intimate shows where I'm more free to just let go and let loose and try things. When I went for Just for Laughs, for instance, that show I did at the St. Denis Theater for the TV that they still show all the time. It's amazing. I had to send in the script. They had to approve everything. It was a very tight set that I had to, make sure. So, I mean, I had fun and I did extremely well, but it wasn't like relaxed, because I know the stakes and I know it's forever.
Hammer the beats.
Right.
Everything is down to the second. Yeah.
Precisely. Now, there's a show here, for instance, in Toronto, not lately, but a monthly show at, oddly enough, an Ethiopian restaurant. It's called Hirut Hoot. Hirut is the name of the restaurant. It's also the name of the woman who owns it with her husband.
Chris Finn mentioned that one as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you're in an Ethiopian restaurant with a group of people who've come out from the neighborhood to enjoy some comedy. And there's no charge to get in, although they do, put money in a well, not a hat, a monkey's lunchbox, oddly enough.
But monkeys as the band, or monkeys as the band? Okay.
Yeah. The guy who hosts it or runs it is a huge Monkees fan. So they pass around the Monkees lunchbox at one point. But the point is, it's a very low stakes show. It's a small room, but the crowd is into it, and I always use it to try something I haven't done before. And it almost always goes over great. Wow. So that's the show I enjoy, because I don't have to, if I'm being paid properly, I make sure that I'm doing well.
The expectation of delivery. Yes. Yeah.
And that's being a professional.
Yes.
But if I'm not being paid, excepting in beer, then, my attitude is I'm going to do what I want to do. And it makes it a lot of fun. And the crowd at this particular place are very open to, having a good time and seeing what you're bringing. And, it's really a lot of fun. I used to love going to Spirits, which was the sort of,
Joanna's bar. That was right at the edge of the gay village, just below Bloor.
That's right.
I can't remember. Church, yeah.
Yeah, right on the corner of Church, and I can't remember the name of the street now. It might be Hayward, but I think I'm wrong, or Hayden. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just one block below Bloor. And that ran Wednesday nights for decades. And it was sort of no man's land between all the comedians, no matter where they worked, generally would show up there. And it was such a fun time.
When I lived in Toronto, I enjoyed going there, and anytime I visited, I'd always try to make a stop by. That was less of a venue for comedy than a home for comedians, is what it felt like.
Exactly. It was kind of like our version of the Friars Club, a place we could all go and hang out and be together and laugh and joke. And I mean, there was an audience, but it was almost as many comedians as audience most weeks. Yeah, that's tremendously missed, along with her.
Yeah. No, Joanna was an incredible person. But
I lost so many friends in the last few years. Not to bring things down, but this is what happens as you get older, of course, is, your loved ones disappear. But, so many of the comedians I admired and loved growing up, and growing up with, Mike McDonald and Steve Schuster and Erwin Barker and Joanna, these are my good friends, are no longer around. I guess it's the one upside to having been the kid. I was the kid for so many years because I started so young.
Yeah.
And, when you're 17, guys who are 24 seem like grown-ups to you.
Sorry, I'm 50 now and trying to picture a 24-year-old as a grown-up.
I'll be 60 in about a month, so I get it. But I'm saying at the time, it's like, really? You can go on school nights?
Now, all right. Now that you're no longer the kid, who are the kids that you're seeing in Canadian comedy that you think have great promise, that make you laugh?
There's lots of funny acts. I mean, again, like always, most people are terrible, but there are some very funny acts out there. I mean, I wouldn't call them kids, but compared to me, most of them are. But I mean, for instance, there's a young guy named Thomas Kalman who's very funny, storyteller type, but really a sweetness and tons of
sort of almost a radio voice, Thomas.
I guess.
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I have a radio voice. A lot of us do. I'm not sure, but yeah, he's terrific.
I've got a radio face. You pointed that out earlier.
I was half joking. And Michelle Shaughnessy is very funny. She's somebody I've known for a lot of years, but she's sort of found her voice in the last few years, and she's got a terrific act and persona, and being beautiful helps, I think. She looks like show business, unlike most of us. There's a very funny young woman named Hodu Hersey, who wears the hijab and talks about her life as a Black Muslim woman comedian. She's very good. But yeah, there's tons of them. I mean, there really are. I mean, I'm often impressed when I go to a show. I see these people and I go, wow, a lot of good acts out there.
Now, with the current situation, with the fact that so many of us are stuck at home, you mentioned that you haven't been doing that much on the line of online shows.
No,
but
I did one. I mean, I've done a couple of these, which is not a show.
No,
I did one
talk show.
Yeah, but I did one Zoom show that somebody invited me, a young comic friend invited me to do her Zoom show, and I said, sure. But there's nobody watching. It's us. I mean, it's like a bunch of people sitting around a living room. It's like,
for those of you who are watching right now, pop a question or say hi to Simon right now, so he can know that somebody's watching.
Oh, I have no idea if anybody's watching. But again, this isn't a show in the same way. I don't need to hear the laughter.
Right.
But did you ever watch the old Dick Van Dyke Show? I don't know if you've ever seen that show.
Yeah, with Mary Tyler Moore.
Anyway, they used to have parties occasionally. And at their parties, everybody would get up and do an act at their parties. It was very silly in a way, but they're all in show business. Okay, fine. But it's in their living room and everybody would get up and do a little song or dance number or comedy routine, whatever. That's what those Zoom shows remind me of. It's like we're doing it for each other, but there's nobody, it's not a real audience. I mean, that's why I hardly bother with open mics. It's like if there's somebody watching, that's one thing. But if it's only people who hello, Peter Bowen, nice to see you.
Peter Bowen is a Montreal comic, and he's excited. I can see that we had watchers for a while, and he's also saying hello to me as well.
Rightly so,
but it's I think people have been finding out the conversation has been interesting. That's why they've been watching and haven't added anything. But
you don't be defensive, Paul. I don't really care if anybody's watching. Really, my reputation will not rise or sink on the basis of this appearance. I mean, not that I'm not delighted that you invited me, but if it is just us, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Really,
it is.
I'm enjoying it.
Part of this is my excuse to talk to comedians that I admire. So I'm
can't imagine how lonely I am these days. I mean, this is a very lonely place to be.
So you're divorced. So you're quarantining alone, or does your daughter?
My daughter is here a lot of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not totally alone. Mostly she's here, although she's with her mom right now, but she'll be back tomorrow.
She do the 2 weeks and 2 weeks, or
it's not that scheduled. She's almost 20.
No, it's not that, but for quarantining purposes, I live with somebody who's immunosuppressed, so that means if I go to it's anyone who's ever had cancer, who's had chemotherapy, their immune system is permanently damaged. Yeah, and anyone on antidepressants, their immunity system is compromised.
I didn't know that.
Most of them I know.
I'm on antidepressants. Yeah, like most comedians, I'm on antidepressants.
Check the list of side effects. A lot of them, because of what they're doing to your serotonin, also make you more susceptible to colds and flus. Which
good, because I wasn't anxious enough.
Yay! Well, you've got the medication to help cover, so it works out.
Exactly. It just about makes up for the fact that it'll more likely kill me.
Yeah, I like how you went from laughing. Your face looked like you went from laughing to crying all in one go.
Well, that's mostly how I feel. It's pretty much a roller coaster of emotion here.
What is your hopes in the future for like? I know that
I'd like to go outside, see the sky. That would be. Oh, you mean more career-wise?
Career-wise, it's what
I was saying.
The announcement in Montreal that we're opening stuff now.
Well, I'd love to come back to Montreal. Talk to David Acker for me. He never returns my emails. He's impossible to reach.
I'm trying to book him for this show, so it's.
Well, there you go. Ask him when you do.
Yeah.
No, I played at the Nest a couple of times, but it's been a long time now, and I always have a great time. I mean, I love Montreal. It's such an exciting city.
Their announcement is that they're going for a little less than a third capacity. They're going to go for only 50 people in the room for when they do reopen, and they have the list of things that they will be doing, including the fact that each performer will be taking their own microphone on stage. So they'll be swapping out. So I guess like the host will have a microphone, and whoever comes off stage will hand it to be cleaned and then go up. So
yeah, that won't be awkward at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually making the joke at the last time I worked, I hosted just up the street at the Absolute Comedy in Toronto. And I was joking about saying that I think comedians are immune because, we talk into that microphone. It's never cleaned. It's been there 20 years with one degenerate after another talking into it. I figure if you unscrew the top, the cure for everything's right inside.
Or the next plague.
Well, it's always like that. You get cured by a little taste of the devil.
I just, when I was younger as a comic, I had a joke where I would press the microphone against my face, and that's now makes me so cringe.
Yeah, look, I used to have a joke, not even a joke. I used to shake hands with the acts as they came up and left the stage. I mean, that's going to be over. We're all going to be Japanese in the future. We're all going to just bow to each other.
No more hugs on stage. Oh.
No, look, if we're lucky, somebody will have a vaccine, and this will be like tuberculosis and polio and all the other things that tormented our societies in the past. And, you'll just get the COVID vaccine and live your life. But it could also be like HIV, where they never have a vaccine and all they have is a bunch of treatments for it, and you still better wear a condom.
Yes. There's been changes recently, haven't you? I don't know if you've heard.
Well, I haven't met anybody, so I have no reason to wear a condom.
True, but there's a new medication called PrEP. That if you take it within 24 hours, you will not get. So it sort of prepares
How
you.
do you know?
Well, you're taking it before you go to party and potentially have unprotected sex. And I believe there has been a second person. There's a treatment in London who has now officially been cured of. I think it may only be cured of HIV, so it may not have been AIDS, but HIV is they're coming up with a methodology for curing HIV, which is something that's only been in the last year.
Well, that'd be terrific too.
Yeah,
but again, I mean, obviously the hope is that things go back to normal, and I can hear a room full of people laughing, because that's really what I need. I mean, again, when I do the show for the audience, but doing the show is for me.
I think I can't find a better way of ending this episode. That is a wonderful quote. SimonRakoff.com is your website. You can, anyone who wants the CD can, there is links there so you can purchase it directly.
How old are you, man? Okay, boomer.
Album. I almost said album. You know how long I've had to fight to not say LP anymore?
Well, I actually have a theory about LPs. Did you notice that LPs disappeared right around the time Pot with Seeds went away? Remember, we used to use the covers just to clean the marijuana of the seeds, and then as soon as Sensimilla became just the standard, it went to CDs because you didn't need all that space to clean the pot anymore before you rolled your joint.
See, I grew up in the woods, so the seeds never went away.
I should have guessed by the haircut.
Yeah, I know. This is screaming sort of like Gene Hackman in the Deep South.
Thanks for having me, man. This was a lot of fun.
My pleasure, Simon. Yeah, so anyone who's watching it, Peter Bowen's giving us 2 tearful faces because we're 2 old guys who just mentioned pot, I imagine. So check out Simon's album, look at his website, and explore. And when he is back in your town, make sure you go see him to be one of those laughing voices that he needs, because he's going to be delivering the laughter to you.
Cheers.
Cheers. This has been They Talk Funny with Simon Rakoff.